Okay, let's dive in. Welcome to this deep dive, where we take the sources you send us, your questions, and really unpack them. Today, it's something pretty unique you brought forward. An experiment someone did using a random generator to pick Bible verses.
Yeah, and the goal, looking at your notes, was really to see if, divine order, real meaning, could actually come out of something designed for pure randomness.
Right. Can order come from chaos?
Exactly. And we'll look at some history they touched on and this idea of God paying attention, all based on the articles and notes you provided.
It sets up this great question right off the bat. How can structure pop up from a system meant to be, well, statistically meaningless?
And the spoiler from your sources, it seems it can, but maybe not how you'd first think.
Okay, so the experiment itself, how did it work?
Pretty straightforward, actually. They used a digital random generator, random.org, specifically just selecting verses. The stated aim was to test for what the notes call active and miraculous revelation.
And they pulled from all over the Bible, different books, translations.
Yep, broad scope. Which, normally you'd just expect a random jumble, like, word salad.
Makes sense. But the research you shared didn't just jump to the results. It brought up an old parallel, the Urim and Thummim.
Ah, right, from Exodus. Part of the high priest's gear, the breastplate, they weren't for random verses, though. More like getting a yes or no answer.
Or figuring out guilt, things like that, for big national issues.
Exactly. A way they sought divine input back then. Kind of a formal oracle system.
But your notes say their use faded out.
Yeah, pretty much disappeared after the Babylonian exile, according to the sources. It shows that how people look for or maybe receive guidance, well, that can change over time.
Okay, so that brings us back to the modern experiment, using random.org. What did happen?
This is where it gets really interesting. Despite the randomness, the collection of verses showed, and I'm quoting from your analysis, strong thematic and prophetic cohesion.
Cohesion. From random picks, what themes?
The analysis you sent listed things like judgment and rebuke, remnant and restoration, messianic hope, kingdom prophecy, and also stuff about discipleship, how to live.
Wow. So major biblical ideas just emerged.
Organically, yeah. That's the term used. It wasn't just random noise. There was a kind of narrative unity.
So how did the sources explain that? Was the random generator not actually random?
No, that's the key point in the material. It suggests the randomness wasn't suspended. The generator did its job. The miraculous aspect, as they frame it, is the meaning that emerged.
Okay, hang on. So the process was random, but the outcome had order.
Precisely. The emergence of theological order and meaning where you'd statistically expect chaos. Your sources suggest this might point to a deeper, maybe providential influence guiding the result, not rigging the process. The surprise is the pattern, the meaning in the pattern.
That's a different way to look at it. Not breaking the rules, but working within them.
Exactly. And they connected this to a passage in Malachi 3.1618.
What does that say?
It talks about people who revered God speaking together and God hearkening and heard it, listening in, basically, and writing their names in a book of remembrance.
So God paying close attention to those genuinely seeking him.
That's the idea. Active listening, engagement with those who think upon his name.
So the connection is, this experiment, your attempt to test revelation, it was like an act of seeking, of thinking upon his name.
That's the interpretation offered in your materials, yes. And the unexpected themes emerging from the random verses, they see that as God hearkening.
Like a nod, an affirmation.
A subtle response, perhaps.
Right.
A sign that the seeking was heard even through this unusual random method.
Okay. So the takeaway for you, the listener who sent this in.
Well, the analysis suggests God's communication isn't maybe stuck in ancient modes. Truth, coherence, it might show up in unexpected patterns, even in things we see as random. It reinforces the Bible's own internal consistency.
So we started with random verses, found this surprising order, looked back at ancient ways of seeking guidance, and tied it to God's promise to listen.
A fascinating journey through the material you provided.
So for next steps, based on your sources, maybe organize those verses you got by theme. Reflect on that Malachi passage.
Yeah, or journaling about discerning God's voice in unexpected ways in daily life. Exploring other biblical stories and guidance could be useful too.
And maybe a final thought to chew on, drawing this all together. Could the patterns in the seemingly random events of your life, could they also be saying something?
A form of communication, maybe. Or affirmation from, well, a purposeful intelligence. Something to ponder. Until next time.